My parents threw me out for my pregnant sister on my 18th birthday, but karma struck back spectacularly at her wedding. Never imagined my 18th birthday would become the darkest day of my life. Turning 18 was supposed to mark my freedom, the start of adulthood, and maybe even a small celebration with my family. Instead, it became the day my parents chose my sister over me. It started in the morning when I came downstairs, excited for the birthday breakfast tradition my mom usually prepared. But instead of the usual pancakes, balloons, and hugs, I was greeted with hushed whispers and nervous glances. My sister Heather was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and swollen. Mom and Dad stood by her side, their expressions a mixture of worry and something I couldn't place. "Heather, she's pregnant," my dad announced, his voice trembling. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Heather, my older sister by just 2 years, had always been the golden child. She was the cheerleader, the straight-A student, the one who never seemed to do anything wrong. And now, she was pregnant. I tried to process the news, but before I could say anything, my mom added, "She'll be staying here while we figure everything out." "Of course," I said, confused by her tone. Then the real hammer dropped. "Which means you'll need to move out," Dad said, not meeting my eyes. "What?" I asked, thinking I must have misheard. "We can't afford to support both of you right now," Mom explained. "Heather needs our help, and you're 18 now. It's time for you to stand on your own 2 feet. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. On my birthday, my parents were essentially kicking me out to make room for my sister and her unborn child. There was no discussion, no warning. Just a suitcase by the door and a hollow promise to stay in touch. I packed my things, tears streaming down my face, and left the only home I'd ever known. My friends took me in for a while, and I worked part-time jobs to get by. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to prove I didn't need my parents to succeed. Fast forward 6 years. I had clawed my way up from the bottom, landing a decent job in digital marketing and renting a cozy apartment in the city. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Meanwhile, Heather had married the father of her child, a guy named Travis, who'd always struck me as more interested in video games than real responsibilities. But hey, to each their own. One day, out of the blue, I got an invitation to Heather's wedding. It was a glossy, over-the-top card that practically screamed, "Look how perfect my life is now." At first, I considered throwing it in the trash. After all, my parents and I hadn't spoken much since they kicked me out. But something inside me, call it curiosity or maybe a desire for closure, made me decide to go. The wedding was being held at a fancy country club, complete with a picturesque garden ceremony and a lavish reception hall. I arrived in a simple yet elegant dress, feeling both nervous and out of place. My parents were there, of course, playing the proud hosts, while Heather glowed in her designer gown. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Vows were exchanged, tears were shed, and the happy couple was pronounced husband and wife. But the real drama unfolded at the reception. As the guests mingled, sipping champagne and nibbling on hors d'oeuvres, I noticed a strange tension between Heather and Travis. They whispered heatedly in a corner, their smiles slipping whenever they thought no one was looking. My curiosity was piqued, but I stayed out of it until the toasts began. The best man, one of Travis's old college buddies, took the mic first. His speech started off well enough, full of light-hearted jokes and sentimental anecdotes. But then, after a few too many drinks, he let slip a bombshell. "And here's to Travis," he slurred, raising his glass, for finally settling down after, 4 years of juggling Heather and Ashley? Man, you're a legend. The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. Heather's face turned as white as her wedding dress, while Travis looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "What did you just say?" Heather demanded, her voice shaking. The best man, oblivious to the storm he'd just unleashed, laughed nervously. "Oh, come on, Heather. You knew about Ashley, right? It's all water under the bridge now." But it wasn't. Not by a long shot. Heather stormed out of the reception hall, dragging Travis behind her. The whispers among the guests grew louder, and my parents looked like they were ready to faint from embarrassment. I stayed seated, sipping my champagne and watching the chaos unfold. It wasn't just schadenfreude. It was a sense of justice. For years, Heather had been the golden child, the one my parents sacrificed me for. And now, her perfect life was crumbling in front of everyone. Later, as the night wound down and the guests began to leave, my mom approached me. Her face was pale, and her eyes were full of regret. I didn't know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Didn't know what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Things would turn out like this. That we were wrong to let you go, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, letting her words hang in the air. I wasn't ready to forgive her or my dad, but for the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand. Karma had struck, not just at Heather's wedding, but in the lives of everyone who had wronged me. And while I wouldn't wish pain on anyone, I couldn't deny the satisfaction of knowing I had risen above it all. My parents had thrown me out for my sister, but in the end, I was the one who found strength, independence, and a life worth living.